Okay, this is a video about storage and batteries, and it's one of my many attempts, and I'm going to make a few of these. And I have some horrible looking PowerPoint slides. I'm not good where I've taken a bunch of data. Now, when I make this video, here's what I'm going to try. I'm instead of I can't I just if you have some app that you press a button and it gives you the answer, I want to see like Professor Fisher, I think his name was Ronald Fisher, who was the father of statistics. He said, I have to see exactly where the data comes from, where they collected the data. Otherwise, I don't believe it. And then I have to go all the way to analysis of variance. And I've got a second point. There are so many PowerPoint slides that I stole and I took, and they're beautiful pictures of batteries and all of that. Here's my problem. If you can't quantify something, if you can't measure something, it's just this meaningless trivial. It really, what good is it? And all these slides and oh, this and that, does it work or doesn't it work? Whatever. Should we use batteries as ancillary services? Should we put them in a data center? What should we do? We can BS all we want, bullshit all we want, and where do we get? And then I'm gonna go through and have some PowerPoint slides, and this is just gonna be one of my videos. And I want to make sure it's that we have a process, and that's what I want to show you. If we have learning in batteries, and the cost of the second replacement battery is less than the first, and the battery has a lifetime of 15 years or 20 years or 7 years, and it has a different degradation. How can we put all of these together in an LCOE analysis? So in this class I had last week, everybody taught me so much. I think I taught anybody anything, probably. Uh, here's what we made. Okay, we put this gigantic file together, and this was, oh, no, shoot, just a minute. I opened the wrong one. Damn. Okay, this file, which here's one of the things we did. We went through a little simulation of a week of loads and some solar and storing the solar in a battery. And we went through and can I find it here? We went through and I've got another video that I'm going to publish or whatever you call it when you put a video up where I went and got a whole bunch of different solar patterns for different places because the hourly pattern of the solar makes a very big difference in the value and the value proposition and I think the business cases for solar and I mean for batteries. Sorry about that. Now, what I'm going to show you, I hope, is that we can take a different place and we have some estimates of solar and we have some estimates with and without tracking, and we have some estimates of how much the solar costs to install. Okay, and then we can use our battery along with the solar for an ancillary service, or we can, as the battery is probably has a shorter life than the solar, we can replace the battery and we have to incorporate, we don't have to do anything, but I'm going to try to show you how to incorporate all of that in a LCOE framework so you can kind of study it. And I'm also going to show you, I hope, I don't know how many videos and how long this is all going to be, uh, how it all corresponds to a financial model. And then we'll do another thing where we make a battery and say that our battery is like a peaking plant, and it never is. It's all a lot of crap when they say it's a replacement for a peaker. A peaker you can just run whenever you want. A battery has a limited duration, but a peaker might not have any gas available, and a battery might have some energy stored. That's what happened in the state of Texas in the US when they had that cold weather. Couldn't run anything. Or you can use the battery for load shifting, or you can use the battery for this whole system, and we can compare a battery with a combined cycle plant, with a gas plant, with a peaker plant, and put everything together. That was kind of that graph I just showed you. So I'm going to try to show you that instead of getting some of these slides where they just put some vague stuff up, you can get it. Now, what I'm going to try to do, and I have no idea if this is going to work, and I'll probably, my stupid computer's beeping because it's bought this computer when my other computer went bad, and then oh, who cares? You don't care about that. So we're going to look at different battery technologies. Now, I took this from the World Bank and I kind of changed it. They said you can use a battery for load shifting, the storing electricity. Of course, I've mentioned this before, obviously, the sun shines, but we need power at nighttime. So we store the electricity and then use it later on. That to me would be just the classic. If I had to think of why you'd use a battery, that would be it. You couldn't use another power plant to do that because you'd be wasting the solar. You can't move things around until you have storage. We can look at that. The font is a little bit different. We can use the battery. You can call it a merchant battery. You can use it for buying when prices are low and selling when prices are high. Now, you can't do both. Duh. Okay? I shouldn't say it like that. That was idiotic. But if you're going to use the battery for load shifting, you can't use the same battery for just finding when the price is really high, buying power when the price might be negative. They're very related, I think, because the price is going to be more and more influenced by kind of solar. If you have a lot of solar, maybe the price is zero. And then there are all these things they put, but they're basically prices. They're basically this provision of ancillary services. So again, they're very different uses. And what I tend to do in my other stuff is just to focus on the load shifting more than anything else. Now, when you have, the question is, can you, look at this, can you, look at, see, I'm going to have some pictures and all this. This is a slide from Lazard, and they say, oh, we can add all of this together. We can take our energy arbitrage and add to that a demand response, add to that a spinning reserve, and add to that a resource adequacy. And what they're saying here, and maybe that's okay, what they're saying here is we can get a capacity payment. This is in a market with a capacity payment. We can get a capacity payment, and then we can get this astronomical IRR of 23%. Now, if that IRR was 23%, here's what everybody's going to do is everybody's going to put in a battery and the IRR is going to come down. We know that, I hope. If you see an IRR in a market where you can't lock in prices, maybe you can lock in prices and the stupid old people will give you that kind of IRR. Good for them. Okay, but be dangerous. That's a aside. Here's what I think about capacity. They're not really. I call them artificial markets. They're not artificial markets. I think of firemen now, and there's this thing called the firehouse effect. I used it in testimony once against a big utility company, and I said, well, the firehouse effect is where the firemen sit around and talk, and they tell each other stories, and they start believing each other's stories, and then the stories get crazier and crazier, and they're about politics and everything else. And they'll believe anything. And there's it's like a psychological kind of thing. But when I'm thinking of firemen right now, you don't pay a fireman based on how many fires there are. That's quantity. That's like energy. You reserve firemen. It's like being a substitute or something. You reserve something just in case it's necessary, and you should pay a fixed payment for reserving their services. So they sit around at a fire station and God knows what they do. You need to pay a fixed payment. That's like a capacity payment for a contingency. And electricity is the same thing, isn't it? We sometimes need things just sitting there to get ready, and that's kind of like a what a capacity payment is, and the batteries can be used to just sit there in reserve, and they should get a flat capacity payment. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. And why did I put this? Let's skip some of this crap one. You can get all this data, and then somebody said, well, the batteries, everybody talks about them, but some of them don't really go ahead. And then I've talked about this many times, but I talk about a battery like a water tower, and it's got capacity here and storage here. Since I've talked about that, I'm not going to repeat it. I put it in the slides. I'll put the slides there. You divide this by this, you divide the kWh by the kW, and you see how much capacity you have. And I found a slide here. I didn't realize the cars seem to have less duration. You take the kilowatt hours divided by the kilowatts, and you per amount of kilowatt, you've got less than an hour. Here's the phone. I think a phone has 2 hours of storage, doesn't it? So you store it. That's how many hours you have in the storage, and you divide it by how much you put in, I guess. Maybe it's not really the hours of the storage, but if you have 10 watt hours divided by 5 watts, you have 2 hours of storage. And what is that one? I don't know. I should know what that is. And then we have up here, you have 10 hours of storage in here. Okay, and then now there was this thing on the internet, and they said this is for ancillary services. And for ancillary services, and this is why it's important, the cost of a battery depends on both the storage and the capacity. And it's not exactly one or the other from what I've read or grabbed off the internet. Now, this is some kind of famous AES battery, I think, in the US, and it can produce whatever. It was 2 megawatts and 0.5 megawatt hours, so it's only got 15 minutes. That might make batteries a lot. That changes the economics. It's somewhere they said it. Not oh yeah. AES developed a 2 megawatt, 500 kilowatt hour system. 500 kilowatt is half a megawatt hour, and so they're just doing that, and that makes sense. Just for having it in reserve, you just have to fix things in very short time periods. There's a picture of this. There's another picture. And now when I did the other batteries, I kept on. You have a hertz or a voltage. You can get the battery capacity in kWh by multiplying the AH by the V, okay, and dividing by 1,000. That was helpful to me when I'm looking at really small ones. And the kWh, be really careful. The kWh is what comes out of the batteries. Now, what this doesn't show is that you lose something. You put it up here, some water evaporates, you lose something, and you get less out than you put in. And the amount that you can get out of this, not the amount you put in, that's the kilowatt hours we're talking about. I'm sure of that. Okay, and then this is this one, and then this is some other thing I got where they said, okay, they said that they can put a premium on solar projects of 15 USD per megawatt hour, and they derive the capacity price. Now, I suppose we'll do that right now. So if you let's start this. Yeah, let's start this. So let's go to our model. We'll keep going back and forth to our model, and this model is on the internet. So now this is just something for ancillary services. Okay, and this battery has a lifetime of 12. Let's put a lifetime of 15 years here. And you can see that the price of the battery changes in USD per megawatt hour. Now I connected that to a solar so we can look at it from a different perspective. Now, here's what I want to kind of tell you. If uh, uh, anything we have, not anything, but investments, how's that? Investments have an upfront cost, they produce something, and they have an operating cost. Now, I made the operating cost, we're going to go through where these numbers come from. I made the cost as a cost per kilowatt hour. So this cost is 400 per kilowatt hour, and we multiply that by 0.25 USD per kilowatt hour, and we're going to spend 100,000 on our capital investment. Anything has a capital investment, and then you have some operating costs down here of 1,000. Now, I've put this whole thing somewhere else. Our capacity, I'm just going to put even though I put it somewhere else, I'm going to put the capacity is the capacity that we have that we can get. Well, that's one that we have 0.25 megawatts. In fact, this was so 15 minutes is if we have 1 megawatt, 15 minutes of a reserve is a quarter of that, right? There, I think, for 15-minute periods in an hour. And then we do the rest of our stuff. This depends on the life, it depends on degradation, it depends on what kind of rate of return we need. And ultimately, we take our capital that we want to recover and we see how much of that capital do we have to recover in each year. Now, I suppose I should do this. I don't, I don't, I don't have it open, so screw that. I'm going to leave the decimals. The decimals are a little confusing, aren't they? So for this 100,000, if we're going to pay taxes, put our debt and equity returns in, have it subject to degradation, recover it over our life of 15, we're going to need to recover this much per year. And then I've said this too much before, and then we better switch it into an amount that's real, not nominal. And somewhere I have this. This is the amount per unit. This is the, if we produce this now, instead, blah, 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 blah. So this is all the data, and then we put our operating and maintenance expense. And now I divided it by this many units. Now, if I put this production as just one if this is it could be a megawatt or a kilowatt, or it could be 400 per, yeah, it's a kilowatt. Okay, then then our capital recovery is this much, and our operating recovery is this much, and we get this per 1 megawatt, and we can, but I can put, let me put this to be, because some people, and I think I made this way too confusing, some people would measure this in this is now not per megawatt hour, but per kilowatt per year. And what I should have really done is made a whole separate column, and that's the amount that we need to recover per kilowatt per year. and we can put that in real terms. So if we have a battery, and this is kind of interesting, and we want to get a fireman, we want to use that battery, and that battery will only be available for 15 minutes, just like uh, 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 I said somewhere up here, like this one. It's 15 minutes. It's 0.25 of an hour. Okay. And somebody might have said somewhere that they get to 15 approximate capacity price. This is that 160 to 175 per kilowatt year is very, very high. Let me just skip for a minute. You can see where we're going. I'm going to talk about the costs very quickly. I'm going to talk about the life very quickly. I'm going to talk about the degradation very quickly. I'm going to talk about the round trip efficiency very quickly. And then we go through and I'm going to talk about the depth of discharge and the learning rate, all of this. Okay, and I'm going to go through what ancillary service is. And this is the price for ancillary services. 10 per, they say it's really high right now because you're getting this really high IRR and it's going to go down to 10. This other one said that it was really, really high at 60. Now let's go back to our file. Okay, and now if we change if we make our battery last for 1 hour instead of only 15 minutes, then we have to pay a lot more. And then we need to get per kilowatt year, we need to get 54. So it starts to illustrate. I'm trying to illustrate some of the stuff. And if this battery really costs, for a really short term battery, it really costs 600, then we have to pay this much. If our O&M expenses are 3, we get this. If the battery only lasts 7 years, then we have to pay 38. You can see that I hope you can see what the LCOE does. It shows you the effect of some of these things. If we have a different degradation, no degradation, we're pulling it down. So we can push this up or down, and we can put in a capacity, and this capacity, of course, this was in a megawatt. So I hope, yes, this was a megawatt, and this was 0.25 of a megawatt, and this was per kilowatt. So that's why we have to be really, really careful with the units. But as long as you can express something as a capital investment, as long as you can find the quantity, now I changed the quantity a little bit around, and as long as you can get some O&M, you can get it. So let's look at some of this very quickly. Now, again, I'm on, in this video, I think I'm going to go through the ancillary services. I've already stopped here. Sorry about going back and forth. But really, the way I've come down to this is people put all these special services and try to add up this and subtract this, and you have to figure out the value of this or that, and you have all these wonderful things that say how valuable everything is and all that. But I just want to talk about the ancillary services, and I've already started to do that. I'm showing you the effects of this. Now we can look at this as a peaker, I told you, but or this, and maybe it might be possible to combine this and this. You'd have to think about it. I'm going to reserve some capacity, and if it's available, I'll use it all of a sudden. But I'm not going to be able to maybe get the really high prices if I've said this. It's like a fireman can't do 5 things. They can't. If there's a fire, they can't also go to bring up person to the hospital in an ambulance. Okay, yeah, it's confusing. I think how we would get the value of different services. It's not very funny either, is it? And then we can do this load shifting, which is really, for me, the ultimate question about renewable energy and storage. And do batteries really work? That's the real question. And how much this, to really do this, we have to get into a lot of issues of how big the battery is, how we have to adjust for the depth of just discharge, how we have to adjust for degradation, how long can it last? And finally, we can use this battery for just managing our retail, our rates. You know, if you can buy power during off-peak times, cut your demand charge out, can it be used like that? And again, the theme is, can we measure these things instead of just BSing about them? Okay, so now I'm going to go through the costs and the degradation and all these kind of things. Now, of course, all I do is, oh God, I'm getting in trouble. All I do is I try to just grab some data. I'm not an expert at this. I've never bought one except maybe for my computer, you know, and so the first thing is there was an estimate, and this is kind of cool. This was from a Department of Energy. They said, and I should have put, this was 2020 and this is 2030, and they had the cost going down. So they had some learning. And then when they had the learning, they also said if it's a 1 megawatt, it costs this much. If it's 100 megawatt, it costs this much. And then you can just use your little Excel, make a curve so you can put in whatever, you know, and then you just get this curve. And don't be afraid to put this as X and this is X squared. Look, I did it wrong. Shit. And this is X and this is the constant, but I did it right down here. I fixed it down here, I remember. And then, so this is the cost. So we can put a 1 megawatt, you can put a 5 megawatt, and then you can put that into your analysis. And in your analysis, you can incorporate just how many economies of scale there really are in this stuff. And it could be buying a centralized one. The next thing is, you know, when I got this from the same slide, I said, oh, look at this, 2019, 477. That seems a little high. And they put all their components, and then they said it's going to go down, so they have a lot of learning here. Now, when you would do this battery analysis, if you're putting a battery in as an ancillary service, and the battery is going to have to be replaced over the lifetime of the solar equipment, you're going to have to replace the battery. And if we replace the battery here or here or here, we'll have a different overall cost. And can we get that into our LCOE? I'm going to show you can. And you have to just do a little bit of work with some PV formulas, and then you can prove it all. For now, look at this, but this was 50 megawatts divided by, so this was 1 hour. This was a 1 hour battery. So that's going to have a higher cost because this one, and there are many of these, that says the cost, if we only have a 1 hour duration versus this one is a really big one, 12-hour duration, it's much less because of our water tower. You know, some of this stuff is related to the cost of this, and some of it's this, and okay, enough of that. So you get all these kind of costs. Here's another estimate of the cost. But again, if we put different costs in, and that's why I put a relatively high cost. If it's a 1 hour duration, we get a higher cost. And maybe here's the problem. So we go back to this one and we say, oh no, we need a kind of curve almost. We can almost use our interpolate function. Can I put equal interpolate? No, I don't have that in here, so I'm not going to put it in yet. Maybe if it's 0.25, maybe that 600 is right, or maybe it's 650. and then we can look at what our cost is. Now, I also did this, okay, on the basis of, let's put 500 back. Was that what I had? Okay. And now with all of this, I could also, now I'm gonna, here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna take this column and I'm gonna copy it to this column. And then I can do kind of, no, I gotta be careful about moving stuff around here. That'll be good. If now I'm gonna put, this is, if we had our, let's take some other one. Remember, there's another video that does this, and remember there was an actual a project in UAE that had a, a value a value of 1.34 US cents, and I'm getting 1.6 US cents. I don't have bifacial, so maybe that's a little bit too high or too low. But we can get very low, a very low electricity cost, and this is how much electricity we have. Now, if we take the same amount of electricity and say, look, I just have to buy a battery for backing up that electricity, because those people are going to say, no, you're going to have to do this. And, you might, let's say you only need 10%, because we only need really, really short-term kind of things. And then I've got to go back up here and put, instead of my total production, I'm going to put the total amount of electricity I'm getting for the solar, because this battery is only to back up the solar, and I want to understand the economics. I want to understand the economics of how much more uh, per megawatt hour is it going to cost me just to have this battery to just stand by. And if it's only 0.1, that's okay. But if it's 15 minutes, then it kind of adds a lot. It adds a lot to the total cost. Not that much. But remember, if I start changing things, this has got a short life. If it's got a longer life, then it doesn't add all that much. And so you can put the costs of the battery, including the ancillary services, together with the uh, uh, together with the 2.5, together with the solar, and derive. I hope I did everything right. I hope I did everything right, and get the how much you need. Now, if they're going to say you need a battery of 4 hours, well, then it's going to add dramatically more to the cost. And I hope I'm showing you just a little bit that that these different, putting these different business units in what you're going to these different, what did we call these, this, not business models but business uses. And then so I've just got all this one. This is this very, very famous battery analysis that said this is going to come down to 100. It doesn't say, everybody, I've seen this graph so many times. They don't tell you what the either the size is here, and they don't tell you whether it's a 1 hour or 4 hour. So it's kind of, we've already got some issues. This one is an old study. But look, I never looked at the bottom. Both systems are sized at 4 megawatts for 16 hours. So this is for a 4-hour battery. And they're saying a lithium was 200, and this was back a while ago. No, this must be the low end. No, this is 2016. And they say it's going to come way down for a 4-hour battery. Oh, I guess this is another one. Okay, some more costs. And this one has another one, duration, and they have these other estimates. And now I'm into O&M expenses. And for the O&M expenses, this was a DOE study, but it's too much almost. I'd rather just see in this is from the Lazard studies, and again, that Lazard has all those graphs and all that stuff. What you really want is down at the bottom, their consultant puts in these characteristics, and they put in the duration of the batteries. So we should expect the 6-hour battery to have a higher cost per kilowatt hour than the 1-hour battery. Okay, and you could draw some curves and do your little curve fitting and all of that. And then I put they're saying it's somewhere around 1.3%. Now you've got to be so careful when you do you have the LCOE that this is all the cost, including insurance, accounting, profits, pencils, everything, land, rent, whatever. And this is another one. They have the warranty expenses about somewhere between 0.5% and 1%. And you could take this O&M and divide it by some kind of cost per kilowatt hour. This is cost. They put a cost per kilowatt hour. I would try to find what percentage of the capital it is, perhaps. Okay, this stuff is useless. Charging cost. You want to figure out if you're going to charge with your solar or not. This stuff, this levelized cost, is totally useless. The cost per megawatt hour what does this mean? What the hell does this mean? Sorry to be moaning like my father used to moan. It doesn't, levelized cost of storage. I want to see what kind of application you're really using. This is what drives me nuts about all of these studies. We want to put everything in. It's not that hard to do. To put it all in like this. Okay, so now there's some more, and now we put the operating life. And again, there's you can apparently get a warranty, but how can you imagine a warranty on your battery for your phone? And if you use your phone like crap and you let it go down to the zero battery all the time, and the battery would, I think, get useless very quickly. And if you hardly ever turn your phone on, it would last for a long time. And so the lifetime depends on all this stuff. So if you're going to get a warranty, it's going to be a complicated kind of thing. And then some people are saying, here is a lithium battery with 20 years. If we put 20 years in I don't really have to do that. If we put 20 years into our analysis here, the costs of then and why let's put we only need it for like that 4.25 a year. That's so dramatically different than if we put in is this all I had on the life? Oh, come on, I had a lot more on the life, I thought. Just a minute. Oh, I thought I put this. This is the degradation. Now, when you compute the degradation, what I had people do is I had them take this is the degradation. In 15 years, we wanted to use 62. It goes to a Tesla battery. Say it goes to 62%. So if you put equal 0.62 and raise that to the 15th power, no, you put let's put 1, and let's put a degradation rate of, let's say, 3%. 3%. 3%! And if I say, okay, 1 minus this one, raised to the, and you maybe should be dividing it by 1 plus or whatever, but let's put to the 15-year. We get, it's about a 3% degradation. That's all. And the degradation clearly is not constant, and I suppose you can criticize the LCOE here because I put a constant degradation in. So if we have to put our, let's put within 50, let's put it at 15 years. And let's put a degradation of 3%, and then you can see what's this, and you can see what's this. You know, you can, oh, no, this isn't right anymore. That's why I tried to put this as a ancillary service, battery ancillary for ancillary capacity. So this is where on our production, if I did it carefully, I just put 1,000 here, I think. Okay. Uh, and yeah, and then this would be USD per kilowatt per year. Okay, you can just, when you see the megawatt hour versus kilowatt hour, again, we're always kind of getting a per kilowatt year, and then it's just what you divide the total cost recovery by, and you have to be a little bit careful about whether you've got kilowatts or megawatts and so forth. Okay, and then here's something else. I know I had something else. Just a minute. Battery life. Why do I have 2 battery lives here? Oh, shit. Okay, let me put, I knew I had more on the battery life. Look at all that battery life crap I've got. Okay, so I'm just gonna, and of course this is on the website, on the battery. I can't remember where I put it exactly. Oh, this is degradation. Okay, we put the battery life here. So here, this home battery life, 5 and 15 years. This person said 7 years. And then when I look at my computer or my phone, I think, oh, God, it can't last 20 years, but maybe if you really take care of it. And then sometimes they put it in cycles, which is really interesting, which says the more you use it, the like if you have to, if I get nervous making these videos, that's going to ruin my remaining life. Maybe I'll die earlier the more I make videos or something. The more you use something, the less life you have. And that's not difficult to incorporate. You just would have to put the number of hours or something, divide that. So this one, if you see cycles, the first thing I do is if it's 1 cycle a day, you just divide it by 365 and kind of get this one 10 years, and you're just all over the place. And then these DOE people, at least they kind of said 6,000 cycles, which is 16 years if I divide it by 365, which I think I can, and you can get 5 to 15 years. And then there's an MIT study, and they compared the batteries to everything else, and they said the lithium batteries 5 to 15 years. And of course, that makes an enormous difference. Now, and then now this latest Lazar one, you can hardly see it. I'm sorry about the size. I think they have much longer lives. Now, I just want to say something else. And how am I doing with time? Oh, I'm already at 43. I'm not going to do this. I'm going to make a second video, and I'm going to prove, here's what I want to prove. I want to prove, I've got to not show this thing, I guess. I want to prove that, number one, that if you are combining this solar project, and this solar project has a lifetime of 35, and this battery now has, let's put 10 only. This battery only has a lifetime of 10, okay? Then it's totally okay to combine this and this, as long, and this is a gigantic caveat, as long as this replacement battery would have the same cost. And we are doing everything in real terms or uninflated terms, and then putting inflation after that. The inflation doesn't matter. if after inflation you do this. And so what I did is I have a proof of all of this somewhere. Oh, investment timing. Okay, and my proof shows you that we could either do our regular old LCOE or with where the battery life just ends and we need a capital recovery in this case of 179, and I put some simplistic kind of stuff in here. Or alternatively, we could keep replacing our battery, and in this case we replace it twice, and the battery doesn't end at the same time as the solar, so we have to do something like selling the battery, and we can put exactly the same number in and get exactly the same target return. Okay, I'm going to have to explain that a little more. And then we can also do a little PV formula to figure out what that is. Now we can do something even better. We can put a learning rate in, and if we assume that our battery is replaced at 66% of the original cost, or yeah, that's okay, what the hell, 66%, then we can do what we can do is we can put in our LCOE, and I'm just doing this quickly right now. In our LCOE, we can put in a replacement. We can divide our battery into two. The original battery at 500, I think I just took it over here, and then I think I put some kind of percentage reduction in, and then the levelized cost of the original battery is this, the new one is this. I hope it's always got the same kind of life and all of that. I think I just took it the same life from over here, and we can incorporate the learning even in the LCOE. Now I have to prove that to you a little bit better, and that gets into proving how the financial model works and all that. And I've talked about this degradation, right? I've already talked about this. Apparently, the different batteries have different degradation. We looked at that. We've kind of gone through that one. I didn't know if you cycle them more. Apparently, you have. And then we have this round trip efficiency, which really we have to understand. This is this business of when you put something in the battery, you don't get the same amount out. And remember, you got to be so careful when you're talking about the capacity of a battery. You don't have to buy a bigger battery. The battery cost, if it's on a per kilowatt hour basis, it's a per kilowatt hour of discharge, not charge. And for some reason, that took me a long time to understand, but people aren't talking about these details and there are different estimates. This lithium battery here, that's one people tend to use, which is about a 10% or a little bit more. So what that means is if you have a solar panel, you have to put more solar panels in to get the power in than getting it out. And that would affect this scenario. This scenario up here, this scenario of a load shifting. And it would also affect the peaker because you have to buy more energy to put into the battery than you take out. But in this case, for the ancillary services, if it's more capacity, it's like that fireman who you're just paying to sit there. Sorry, fireman, don't get mad at me if your husband's a fireman or something like that, please, or your wife, please. You're paying them, and when you pay them, you're already paying them based on some kind of measure of capacity on how much they're going to leave the fire station. It's already got the losses. I don't know how to get the losses into my fire example. Sorry. I just can't think of it now. I'm not on the ball, you know. Other people could make an analogy, I'm sure. Okay, so then we've got the life and the round trip efficiency, which we don't have to put into our ancillary service case. Okay, and then we're on round trip efficiency. Blah 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 blah. Battery life. I got to delete that one, don't I? So I'm going to put this new PowerPoint slides with the shitty little stuff in here, and the depth of discharge is almost the same. Oh God, somebody's yelling. Oh shit. this is, if you're going to have to buy a battery, be really careful. If you're already measuring in an output kWh, you can do it. But if you're measuring how many solar panels you got to put in to get the battery out, then you've got to account for it. Figuring out when to account for it is a big deal. And then I put the learning rate here, and then I'm just going to talk for a few minutes because I want to get this video done about the what are ancillary services? I hate them. Just the name, it's just like a confusing name that engineers from the utility company can sound so smart about, And this, let's, I don't know if this is going to mess everything up or help, but the solar, here somebody said you have you don't have flexibility, and for wind, there's inertia, whatever that means, I think. And solar has some kind of predictability, but there's a lot of fluctuations from clouds, aren't there, and from rain. And wind is less predictable, so we have this problem of unpredictability, basically. That's really where it comes from. And then they always talk about this frequency regulation and the fact that supply and demand have to be in balance every single tiny little instant. Maybe not exactly quite true, but pretty close. So we have to have enough capacity available. We have to have our firemen ready to go all the time, every instant. I should have firemen like that too. And there are different kinds of this, and this is where I already showed you a couple of this, and this is where somebody saying that in 2016 they said it was really good. By 2018, it said it's not so good. Whatever. And this is what I do all the time. If you look at this thing, okay, and I think I made another video about this, and I probably made a video which is a lot more relaxing for me to make about. About here's the hourly solar, and here are the solar graphs. So here's our UAE tracking. With tracking, and we can compare that to our UAE fixed without tracking. This all comes from the EU database, that wonderful database, and look how smooth it all is. Oh, how beautiful. That's pretty predictable. Isn't it pretty darn predictable? But now, instead of this one, let's put Paris in there. And now, look at all that. Paris is not quite the same. And let's compare Paris to Montreal. Okay, and in Montreal, we had really a lot of clouds that day. Then we have more in Paris, then we have more in Montreal. They go up and down. And if you look at this one, and if I change the day around, this all works with match and index. And the people, we did it really fast in the class. I think I made another video on it anyway. If you change the day around, not only, we have this unpredictability across days, which is really hard to manage. The batteries aren't going to do much about that. But that last one we just did, this one, when this demand suddenly went down, then we suddenly have to get another plant operating. And that might be where the ancillary services really come in. Now, in this last class, we did almost the same kind of thing. Oh, what happened here? Why did both Montreal and Paris had exactly the same sunlight on a nice day? And here it changed. Okay, enough of that. And then it changes day by day. It's not very predictable. We have to have some backup. And the question is, do we need 15 minutes or do we need an hour or do we need less or more? Blah, blah, blah. And I can't answer all of that because I'm not one of these engineers who tries to make things. No, they're engineers are very good people, and I know you. I'm not. That was wrong. The way I said it. I'm really, really sorry. Okay, but some of the utility people in the old days who aren't there anymore would say, okay, we need extra. Now, if it's in northern Nigeria and it's all smooth, like I showed you the UAE, that's a very different thing. Now, the next thing you can do is this wonderful website. This is so much better than the rest of these things, that Nord Pool, where you get the hourly prices. You can also get the hourly wind. So in wind, look at the kind of fluctuations you have here. That's the only thing I'm going to tell you right here. And well, no, I'm not. If the wind goes down, look how the price goes up. I express the prices in a price of electricity divided by natural gas to get a, but that's the same kind of thing. So look at the prices going up, and then we have, oops, uh, when we have more wind, it should be going down, or maybe it's following a lag. We had some low wind, it should be going up, blah, blah, blah. And then I get so crazy. I love this. I gotta go and update this though. Making the presentations for me, and this was during a month, I guess, wasn't it? I did the same sort of thing as with the prices, you know. And then I tried to make a scatter plot. Good, confuse people. So these are the different types of ancillary services. For me, a spinning reserve, the way I think of a spinning reserve is a power plant has some extra. It's not running at full blast. You can put your foot on the accelerator on the gas, and you can get it. The car is already running, and if you have to go faster, all of a sudden you just put your foot on the gas. Is that right? Maybe you just turn it up. You can turn it up or down. If it's already, if your car is already running at absolutely full speed, absolutely full, you can't run it any faster. You're going to have to use another plant. But most of these plants have a little bit of extra. Okay, and it takes a little bit of time to get there, and they can't do it immediately. So that's why people say, the frequency regulation, which is this instantaneous, practically stuff with all these sine curves and all that stuff. Batteries might be more important for that, but it depends very much on what kind of system you have. This is again, it just shows you that whatever, we have these sudden changes. Here's a diesel plant. That's the way I think of it. This diesel, and this is all out of order. But if we take the amount of how much diesel fuel you use compared to the electricity at full load at 8 kW, we can take the 2.1 input divided by 8, and you'll get a small number. If it's 0.9, this is at 1.4 load. Sorry, I got it all. This is a caterpillar. It's inefficient. One of the costs of the ancillary services is if you imagine you're on an island and you only have a diesel plant. I went to Barbados. What a great place that was. Oh, I miss it. I have to sit here because my daughter won't let me go anywhere. Oh my God, I'm going to shut up, but I am going crazy. If we, if, God, I miss it. If we're in Barbados and they have these kind of old diesel plants and there's a solar, you got to keep that diesel plant running at some minimum level. That would be like a cost of an ancillary service. It's like a capacity thing. You can't just suddenly have the plant turn on, especially these old ones. Okay, and then here are some more examples. If you have a hydro system and a dam behind the hydro system, and I know this is bad, it can be bad for all those poor people who have to be flooded out, and you can get rid of beautiful scenery and all that, so I'm not arguing for that, but you can get instantaneous. So that the cost of this solar system depends on what kind of other plants you have. That's what I'm trying to say. The value of this ancillary service and whether we want to put this, and now I hope you can see that if you use this framework that I'm kind of like selling almost, I'm not really selling anything because you're not, whatever. But that, look at these graphs. They're nice graphs, aren't they? Okay. And maybe not up to your standard, but this one, if we had uh, if we had a really good hydro system, we might not need this, and we might get this. In UAE, I doubt we have a really good hydro system. Okay, so the true cost of solar, you can argue that the true cost of solar should reflect these ancillary services, but you've got to be really careful. And then the question is, well, why here are hourly loads. So this file, I try to put kind of everything, so it got to be really a big file. If we put load shapes, so this PJM in the US, in the old days, I couldn't find it. This is like a load for a commercial building. This is an electric vehicle. I don't know why it's this charging station. This is a big utility in the US called AEP, whatever. That's their name. It used to be American Electric Power. This is the one that serves Chicago. Now look at the one that serves Chicago. If you look, there's this fluctuation. Every day there's a fluctuation, and if you get into the summertime, here's what happens. There are only a few really hot days in Chicago. Most of the time it's not so nice. And then we have a few hot days, and the difference between the minimum and the maximum is really big. There should have been a peak here somewhere. Maybe that was in when was it? Huh. Oh, maybe I did something. It's not exactly one. Now this looks like it's we can kind of see how much air conditioning people use by just looking at this. And again, look at this. It's all it does is use index and match, and you just match this date to the dates I collected all this stuff. This is 8/7/60 hours. Okay. When you do this stuff, why don't you charge ancillary services? What happens if more people took showers here instead of here? What happens if people woke up late? What happens if the industry went off? But you can see the loads really are kind of smooth, aren't they? They're kind of predictable. And I'll bet you if this must have been a colder day. And I'll bet you if you put the temperature in for the next day, whoops, and I don't know what happened right at the end there. Oops, that was December. If you put in the temperature for the day and look at the history, you can, ooh, what happened here? Maybe this is a Sunday or something. Ooh, God knows what happened there. You can really kind of see what happens. Now, we're going to use this later on, but my point with ancillary services is the argument that's kind of different than these graphs, okay? And I'm just trying to explain ancillary services, something I probably shouldn't be trying to explain in a kind of a simpler way, okay? And so I've got a bunch of this stuff, and then there are these prices of ancillary services. How much do they really cost? And is the true cost of the ancillary service more? They trade them and you can bid on them and all that. Is it more or less? And if it's per megawatt for just for reserving the capacity, is the battery cost does the cost justify it? And it depends on all this stuff. And look, I'm finished with this video. Okay, goodbye.